Your neck just disappeared. Here's why hairstylists won't tell you this. But here's the thing. It's not aging. It's not your posture. It's actually your haircut creating an optical illusion. 6 specific mistakes that make your neck look inches shorter than it really is. If you clicked because you've noticed this in photos, that hunched, neck disappeared look, you're exactly where you need to be. I'm going to show you which cuts are stealing your neck length and give you the exact words to use with your stylist. By the end, you'll know which cuts elongate your neck and how to make sure your next haircut reveals the elegant neckline you already have. One woman in our community said this single change made her feel like she had her neck back after years. It's the kind where people ask if you lost weight. The first mistake is happening at the back of your head right now. Most stylists actually recommend this cut, but here's what they don't realize about how it photographs. I'm curious, how old are you and where are you watching from? I love hearing from women at different stages of this journey. So let's start with that first mistake I mentioned. It's happening at the back of your head right now, and it's the reason your neck vanishes in photos. You're at a family gathering, someone takes a photo from behind, and when you see it later, where did your neck go? And if you've ever wondered, is this just how I look now? The answer is no, it's how your haircut looks. Here's what's actually happening. The human eye follows lines. When your hair creates a strong horizontal line at the nape, that perfectly straight edge right where your neck begins, it stops the eye from traveling upward. Think of it like a fence that says, neck ends here. On the other hand, when hair gradually gets shorter as it approaches your neckline, what stylists call a tapered or graduated nape, it creates upward movement. Your eye follows that gentle slope upward, making your neck appear longer. This is especially common with bob cuts that end in a perfectly straight line all around. You might love how it looks from the front, clean and modern, but from every other angle, it's working against you. Here's what changes everything. Ask your stylist to graduate the back or create a tapered nape. This means the hair gets gradually shorter as it gets closer to your neck, creating flow instead of a hard stop. Here's the exact language. Instead of cutting straight across the back, can we graduate it so it flows into my neckline? I want to avoid that heavy horizontal line. The visual difference is remarkable. Instead of your neck ending abruptly, it flows into the hairline. Photos from behind? You'll actually see your neck. Side profiles? That hunched look disappears. Now, that heavy nape is usually easy to spot because you can feel all that hair sitting on your neck. But the next mistake is sneakier. You might think you're adding volume and lift, but you're actually doing the opposite. Here's a mistake that's particularly frustrating because it happens with the best intentions. Your stylist keeps the crown the very top of your head long, thinking this adds volume, and in theory, longer hair should mean more fullness, right? But with mature hair, this actually backfires. The longer the hair on top, the heavier it becomes. And heavy hair doesn't lift, it falls flat. You're fighting gravity with a losing strategy. And if your hair feels thinner than it used to, this becomes even more important. You know that moment when you leave the salon and your hair looks amazing, full, shaped, lifted, but by the next day, it's flat as a pancake? You keep trying to recreate that volume with products and blow drying, and it just won't. The problem isn't your styling skills. The problem is that your hair is too long on top to lift itself. Here's what happens. When the crown is flat, it lowers your entire head-to-neck ratio. When you add height at the crown, you're literally raising the starting point of your vertical line. Now here's the part that seems backward. To get more volume at the crown, you need less length on top. Shorter layers at the crown are lighter, which means they can actually lift and hold shape. This is especially true if your hair has gotten finer over the years. The thinner your hair, the more you need this technique. What you want to ask for is shorter layers at the crown, or crown layering for lift. Be specific, you want the very top section, about the size of a small plate, cut into layers with the shortest piece at the very top. Here's exactly what to say. Can you add short layers at my crown? I want height at the top, not length that's too heavy to lift. I need the weight reduced so it can actually hold volume. Your stylist might suggest keeping length, and you can say, I understand that sounds backward, but I've learned that shorter layers at the crown give me lasting volume instead of flat hair that needs constant styling. When you style it, you'll notice something wonderful. Volume happens naturally. The cut does the work for you. So, we've addressed the back and the top. But what about length itself? That brings us to mistake number 3. And this one affects women who love their long hair. Let's talk about something that might feel controversial. Long hair after 60. That old rule about women over X age must cut their hair short? That's outdated and honestly, kind of ridiculous. But here's the truth. Long hair that's all one length can actually create a visual weight that drags everything down, including the appearance of your neck. If you've noticed your long hair making you look more tired or your neck seeming shorter in photos, the problem isn't the length, it's the lack of shape. I had a conversation with a woman recently who said, I've had long hair my whole life. It's part of who I am. But everyone keeps telling me I should cut it short now that I'm 65, and I just don't want to. But I also don't love how it looks anymore. What I discovered is that she didn't need to cut her hair short. She needed layers. Here's what happens with one-length hair. All the weight sits at the ends, creating a horizontal line at the bottom like that blunt Nape problem we discussed, but lower down. That weight pulls the eye downward, which is the opposite of what we want. The solution isn't to cut your hair short, it's to add long layers throughout. What you're asking for is called long layering or face framing layers with internal layering. This removes weight without removing length. Here's the specific request. I want to keep my length, but I'd like long layers throughout to remove weight and add movement. Can we start with face framing layers, then add internal layers to reduce the heaviness at the bottom? I want volume and flow, not all the weight at the ends. Your neck becomes part of a graceful vertical flow, rather than the base of a heavy mass. I'm so curious, have you been told to cut your hair short because of your age? Drop a comment and let me know your experience. I read every single one, and your stories help other women realize they're not alone in this. Now, while we're talking about layers, there's one type of styling that actually creates the opposite problem. And if you asked for layers at your last haircut and ended up looking older rather than younger, this might be why. This next one might hit close to home. If you're teasing your hair heavily, using lots of hairspray, or creating that very structured volume that doesn't move in the wind, we need to have a loving conversation. And listen, we've all been there. This styling was everywhere in the 80s and 90s. And some of us perfected the technique and never quite moved on. The intention is beautiful, you want volume, you want lift, especially after what we just learned about crown height. But here's the gentle truth. That stiff, heavily sprayed volume is actually working against you. Overly structured hair creates a very specific look that our minds automatically connect to a particular era. When someone sees that highly teased, immobile volume, they unconsciously think 80s or 90s, which ironically can make you appear dated rather than polished. But beyond the style aging you, there's something else happening. That kind of volume, when it's teased and sprayed into a round, stiff shape, often looks disconnected from your softer, more natural features. The contrast between hard hair texture and soft skin can actually emphasize lines rather than minimize them. From a neck perspective, overly structured volume creates a bubble effect. Instead of flowing gracefully from your crown down to your nape, there's this abrupt contrast between the big, stiff crown and wherever your hair ends. Here's the beautiful shift. Modern volume says, "Look at my face," while older volume says, "Look at my hair." You want people noticing your eyes, your smile, your natural radiance, not your styling effort. The modern approach is actually easier. Instead of heavy teasing, try a volumizing mousse at the roots before blow-drying. Use a round brush to lift the hair at the crown while drying. If you need extra lift, there are wonderful root-lifting powders that add height without stiffness. The key test. When you touch your hair, it should move. When a breeze hits it, it should flow. That natural movement is what looks current and effortless. And here's permission you might need. You don't need as much volume as you think. Strategic height at the crown? Yes. But that huge, heavily sprayed silhouette, it's hiding your natural elegance, not enhancing it. So we've covered the back, the top, the length, and the styling. But there are two more mistakes, and they're related to each other. They both involve where you part your hair and what that does to your proportions. Here's a quick one that you can actually assess right now while watching this video. In fact, I encourage you to pause and grab a mirror if you'd like. We're talking about your part specifically, a center part combined with hair that has no volume at the crown. Now, center parts can look absolutely stunning when styled correctly, but if you have a center part and your hair falls flat on both sides, it creates what I call the divider effect. Your hair is split down the middle, falling flat against your head, which emphasizes the width of your head rather than the height, and reduces that crucial crown height we've been discussing. Here's how parts work. A center part creates two equal sections of hair on either side of your head. When both sections lie flat, you're creating horizontal volume, meaning width rather than vertical lift. A side part, on the other hand, creates asymmetry, which naturally creates lift on the heavier side. Think of it like stacking blocks, a pile centered and flat, versus a pile swept to one side that has height. A side part softens the face and creates angles and shadows that add dimension. The most common version of this mistake is center part plus no crown layers plus hair pulled back tightly. This combination eliminates any possibility of lift and creates that flat, widening effect that doesn't serve you. The simplest fix you can try immediately is changing your part. Move it off center, even just an inch or two makes a difference. Here's how to find your most flattering side part. Use your comb to draw a line from the outer edge of your eyebrow straight up. That's generally where your side part should be. But here's the thing, if you've had a center part your entire life, your hair is trained to fall that way. So, when you first try a side part, it might feel strange, and your hair might try to flip back to center. This is normal. Give a side part a few days to settle in, and you'll be surprised how quickly your hair adapts. Your face looks lifted, your neck looks longer, and your overall appearance has more dimension and interest. And that brings us to our final mistake, which is actually related. It's about where volume sits and where it doesn't. We've reached the final mistake, and this one ties everything together. It's about volume placement specifically, having volume in all the wrong places. If you have a lot of hair at the bottom, at the ends, around your jaw, at the nape, but little to no volume at the crown or around your cheekbones, you've created what's called an inverted triangle or pyramid shape. And this shape, more than almost anything else, visually shortens your neck while making your face look bottom-heavy. This happens most commonly with hair that's been layered incorrectly, short layers at the bottom, long layers on top, or with hair that's accumulated all its weight at the ends. When you have a lot of volume at the bottom of your hair around your jaw, neck, and shoulders, it visually widens that area. Meanwhile, if your crown is flat, you have no height to balance that width. The result is that your face looks bottom-heavy, your jaw looks wider, and your neck looks compressed and shortened. There's also a gravitational visual effect. When volume is concentrated at the bottom, it looks like everything is sagging downward, which is the opposite of the lifted, youthful look we're going for. The solution is to completely invert the triangle. You want volume at the crown and around the cheekbones, the upper third of your head, and less volume at the bottom, especially around the neck and jaw. Here's what to ask your stylist. I want to shift my volume up. Can we add shorter layers at the crown for lift and thin out the ends to remove weight at the bottom? I want fuller at top, tapered at bottom. When you achieve this crown height, volume at the cheekbones, tapered through the jaw, and nape, something remarkable happens to your neck. Your neck looks longer and more elegant, and your entire head to neck proportion looks lifted and balanced. And that's the through line connecting all 6 mistakes. Every single one either pulls your visual line downward or adds weight where you don't need it. The solution to all of them is to create upward movement and vertical lift. So, let's bring this full circle. Remember that family photo we talked about at the beginning, the one where your neck disappeared into your shoulders? Now you know exactly why that happened. It wasn't your neck. It wasn't your posture. It was hair making choices that created optical illusions working against you. And the beautiful thing? Every single one of these mistakes is completely fixable. You don't need surgery. You don't need expensive products. You need knowledge, which you now have, and strategic cutting that works with your proportions. After today, you have clarity. You know which specific elements shorten your neck and which elongate it. You have exact language to use with your stylist. That's the difference between hoping a haircut turns out well and knowing how to ensure it does. Let me give you the quick reference version you can screenshot. 1. Avoid heavy blunt lines at the nape. Ask for graduated or tapered backs. 2. Add shorter layers at the crown for lift. Don't keep length on top expecting volume. 3. If you have long hair, add long layers throughout to remove weight distribution. 4. Style with soft, movable volume, not stiff, heavily sprayed structure. 5. Try a side part for asymmetrical lift instead of a flat center part. 6. Concentrate volume at the crown and cheekbones, not at the jaw and ends. Those 6 shifts will completely change how your hair interacts with your neck. The next time someone takes a photo of you from behind or the side, instead of that hunched look, you'll see something else. A graceful line from crown to shoulders. A visible, elegant neck. Imagine walking into your next family gathering and loving what you see in every photo. If this video helped you understand why your current style might not be serving you, I'd love to know. The community here is incredible, and so many women share their experiences in the comments. And if you have a friend who's been struggling with her hair, maybe she's considering chopping it all off out of frustration, share this with her. Sometimes the best gift is understanding why something isn't working and knowing there's a better way. Thank you for being here. You deserve to feel as elegant and radiant as you are.